should not listen to men's rights advocates if you want to know what they have to say.
Number ZZ9 plural Z alpha. Number ZZ9. I said I've never seen such idiots in all my life.
Listen to all this,
Yeah, couldn't agree more.
Like a furry torpedo to the jugular. This is Honey Badger Radio. Radio with Buddy.
There we go. Oh, it was not me. There we go. Hello and welcome to Hannah's starting weird today. That's okay. I kind of expected technical difficulties today. Every time we have something like this to talk about, we have the technical difficulties. It's obviously just a coincidence, guys. Nothing else, okay?
Nothing to do with not getting US aid.
Yeah. No, totally no no conspiracy at all, and yeah, no need for your tinfoil hats or nothing. It's perfectly normal for your laptop to need a forced update like 4 or 5 hours after the last update, just when you speak the words "let's get started." That's usually the trigger for an update, right? So, nah, nothing weird about that at all. At all.
See, everyone's white pilling about how U.S. aid is being drained as the swamp that it is. But honestly, as long as you're allowing feminism to exist in the deepest cause of our education system, it's just going to keep re-emerging. It's just going to keep coming back.
It's everywhere.
Because this is where all this shit came from.
Yeah, you know, we hear all the time that feminism is cancer, right? It's black mold. You can't get rid of it. It is, every time you think that you have completely eliminated it, you discover that it was hiding somewhere in a little crack or crevice that you weren't expecting it to be in, and oh hey, now it's growing up the wall again. So we're going to look into some of those cracks and crevices tonight. This is going to be a fun show. So, hello and welcome to HBR Talk 341. A wild rabbit hole appears. This was kind of unexpected. I originally was going to go straight from talking about the Ukraine war to talking about U.S. interference in Iran. way back in the day, and moving forward from that to this point to demonstrate a little bit about how throwing away our young men's lives to interfere with other countries' politics actually just costs us more of our young men's lives. But before we get to that, we had 2 sets of news stories come up. There was another thing that I thought, oh gosh, we got to talk about this. 'Cause there were a bunch of things that came out just in the last week that kind of demonstrated that the concept of a woman's tears is not as effective as a manipulation tool against the public anymore all of a sudden. And so I was going to kind of celebrate that a little bit. And then all this stuff came out about the funding site that you can actually look at here, usaspending.gov, and find out what our government is funding. And of course people are looking into USAID and all of the foreign aid and all the different things it's doing and everything. I started searching other things, right? So initially, I tried searching women, and anything that mentions women came up. So if something just happens to mention that it's a woman-owned business, and it got a COVID loan, that comes up. Well, that might have been DEI, it might not have been DEI, we can't, And I tried to compare by searching men, and anything that has the syllable men or the sound men in one of its syllables came up. So like anything that had ment, M-E-N-T, as a syllable, or anything like that. And everything that had women has men in it. So that all came up. It was like, well, that's not a good way to search for men's issue stuff. Tried searching masculinities, right back to feminism. So we'll start with feminism, because that seems to be where we are. And you can see, let's see if it shows. Yeah, my search keyword was just feminist. I didn't search anything fancy. Didn't go through and look for, I did find feminist frequency. Feminist frequency got one of those COVID loans, but that wasn't really what I was looking for. So we'll get down to brass tacks here with all of that introduction, so you kind of know what my process was and how I got to this information. Because I know people are going to ask, it's going to be all about, oh, well, you manipulated this somehow or whatever. No, this is just how it comes up when you search feminist. And this is just what's available, what information is available from that search, right? So that's where we are. That's where we're going today. So to introduce myself, I'm your host, Hannah Wallen, here with the personification of perceptivity, Mike Stevenson, and nonsense annihilator, Lauren Brooks. And tonight, like I said, we're putting the war dogs to bed because we've got to have a little talk about money, but not money for us, because we'll unlike other people, other movements, the men's rights movement doesn't get big wads of cash from the deep pockets of our rich Uncle Sam.
We don't get big wads of cash from
we don't get
USA.
big wads of cash from anybody.
We've been going for 10 years, for 11 years, going on 12 years.
Yeah.
Without any of this aid. We don't need any of this aid.
We are grateful for our patrons, but none of them is named Uncle Sam. We will say that. Yeah, we don't really need Uncle Sam, because we do have a lot of people who are so dedicated to this cause and want this information to get out there that they do help us out. And so, before we get into...
And they don't need millions of dollars from USAID to fucking do it.
No.
We can do it by ourselves. And we've done a bloody good job of doing it by ourselves for 10 fucking years.
Largely in $5 and $10 increments from ordinary guys, actually, which all of us are as well. Like I will be blunt. I went to college twice to find out 2 professions I didn't want to pursue. It's like I've said, when I talk to young women about not making certain types of mistakes, it's because I made them, and afterward realized how profoundly stupid they were, and I would prefer to see that not happen to other gals. I would like to see them realize that before they hit those decisions, and then take the other path that I didn't take, and not end up in that kind of debt, and not spin their wheels for so many years before they are prepared to go to the next stages they want in their lives, right? So I'm like totally nobody. All of us are pretty much nobodies, in terms of we've never worked for big media. We've never been recognized by the establishment for anything. Our political activism has always been bottom rung. I've gone to protests, but not as anybody that people would hear speak. This is the biggest I've ever been as a person, and it's never felt like a good fit for me. It's always been weird that anybody looks up to me, because it's not something that I made a goal in my life. I just started digging into information and realized that problems I was seeing happen around me were actually systemic and institutionalized, and they were affecting men all over the country. And the more I dug, the more I realized, oh shit, this is happening all over the world. This is happening to men in other countries, and in some countries it has hit even harder than it has in the West. In India, it hit like a dirty bomb. It's insane in India. It's even worse than for people who live in the US or the UK. What's happening to men in India is even worse than anything that we've seen happen here. And it's there's no brakes on that train right now. It's just going out of control.
This, by the way, is why every country in the West is facing the inflow of Indian men into their countries, either by the guise of H-1B visas, or just because your country just thinks, oh, you're not from our country, then you must be awesome, and so they keep bringing over fucking millions of Indians. Even though there's billions of Indians, and so this is a never-ending source of just anyone who's not European, and it's difficult to get this across. But yes, we really are led by governments that are, dare I say, oikophobic. As long as they're not from the country that we're supposed to be serving, they must be good people.
Yeah. And I will say this. What we exported to India in the form of feminism is so volatile and so horrific that if I understand this right, every 8 seconds, from what I've read, a man in India decides it's not worth living anymore. They're not just moving here to escape. They're dying to get away from it. When I saw what was happening, I started getting involved with Allison and Karen and doing this part-time, and this is where we are now. So for anybody that's come along that's new listening, we're not doing this because haha right wing blah blah blah. We've also criticized a lot of things that Republicans have done. I got really livid most recently when the Violence Against Women Act came up, and rather than the argument being, hey, this is gendered and there are male victims and there are people who are being accused, mostly male victims of false allegations as well, people who are being accused falsely and then railroaded through the court system, and it takes years for them to get that fixed, if ever. And this should be gender neutral. The argument was, how much control is the United States government going to use this law to take in reservations? Like, how much control are we going to impose on reservations because of this? And it's insane. You know, like the idea that the only problem with a law is that it's not being imposed enough in an area that we've promised is supposed to be autonomous, at least to a certain degree, and not, gee, we're doing this unfairly to one sex, and we're ignoring the needs of the opposite sex. If your party doesn't figure that out, there's something wrong. So much as we love what Musk has been doing, and much as we love that the attacks on Trump have reduced the effectiveness of crocodile tears from women as a tool of manipulation, we're still waiting for the other shoe to drop. We're not holding our breath. We have hope that things will get better, but there's a lot of things that we'd like to see from the Republicans in power that we can't afford to hold our breath on. And one of them is addressing this kind of funding. There are other things, and we'll end up talking about those as well. But the difficult thing for me personally is trusting that the Republican Party is going to get it, that it's still abuse when a man is abused, when a woman is the abuser, and that whatever methods the federal government decides to impose to address that, whether they're going to impose that on, a complete level of funding shelters and everything, or whether they're simply going to become an advisory clearinghouse, it should be gender neutral. It shouldn't be something that says, hey, women deserve protection, but men can handle it, right? Men get shot by their wives and their exes. Men get stabbed. Men get poisoned. Men get attacked by hired killers, and men get driven to suicide. And these things should not be happening without recourse. That men should be able to go and get help to get out of those situations just as well as women should. And men get lied about. And when a woman uses lies to try to get custody of a child, or to try to get property in a divorce agreement, or just to try to get revenge, which happens as well, that should not be effective either, right? A guy should have due process rights, just the same as a woman does. So that's what we want to push for. So when I started hearing about this funding, of course I had to look up feminism. We've been hearing for years from feminists. We talk about the power of feminism. We have no power, no authority. We're just a bunch of helpless women. Stop picking on us, right?
And we just need another $1 billion.
Mm-hmm.
If you please.
Yeah, another $1 billion and another, but we're not getting any money from the government. We wish we were getting money from the government. They're getting shitloads of money from the government. So, and it's not all going to feminism under names of feminist organizations. Like names that you would be like, oh, that's definitely a feminist organization. Like this organization here at the top, PACT Incorporated. So I opened this up, and I'm going to shrink this down now that you've seen it in larger print, because you can't see the amounts in the larger print, and I would have to actually increase the size of the tab. I don't want to do that. So, $6 million, right? The $6 million recipient here. So what do they do? As soon as this loads up, the description of the grant, and this is the $6 million grant. You can see it's a cooperative agreement, $6 million grant to PACT. For what? And it's all in caps because this is the government. So I should be a smartass and read this as if I'm yelling, but I'm not going to do that because I had gastroenteritis for a couple of days, and my throat's not going to do that.
Jeez.
Sorry, guys. Yeah, I'm over it now. I'm so totally over it, but my throat still hurts from the effects.
I bet.
Yeah. The transform digital spaces to reflect feminist democratic principles activity. That's one thing. That's what it's called. The transform digital spaces to reflect feminist democratic principles activity. Because the government doesn't simplify anything.
No.
Is designed to implement a global approach, global exporting of feminism, right? To addressing technology-facilitated gender-based violence. Technology-facilitated gender-based... So, you all want to talk to the people you know and find out if there's been any news stories about some dude beating his wife with a computer keyboard or something? And like, because this is technology facilitated. Maybe he went after her with a power drill. But we know what it really is, right? What was the Gamergate controversy, the consumer side of the Gamergate controversy, most frequently falsely accused of?
Sexism.
And harassment.
Sexism and harassment against the women.
Yep. So $6 million being spent to do this activity, which will look at a variety of subsets impacted by this form of violence, saying mean things to women's on the internet, guys. We are spending $6 million to stop women from bickering at each other, because what did the research show? What did Pew find? Most of the so-called harassment came from other women.
I'm laughing, but I really want to cry because it's just disgusting. And they just completely ignored that, right? They completely ignored that study. But hey, now I guess we understand why. It's because they were being paid
more money than I will ever see in my whole life. Right?
You and me both, sister, combined.
From to find out what to do about bitches be crazy.
Right.
Yeah. So here we go. Including towards women in politics and public life. So women in politics and public life. Now we're talking a variety of subjects impacted by violence, including Hillary Clinton. It's violence to criticize Kamala Harris. It's violence to criticize Occasional Cortex. What's her name? AOC.
AOC, yeah.
Yeah. And yeah, that was probably considered violence, right? Calling her Occasional Cortex. If I was more blunt and call her a dumbass, they really would call it violence, right? And maybe they're including revenge porn in this, although they really don't need to, because the states are all addressing that with laws intended to give them broader powers than just going after revenge porn. They're actually going after cartoon porn that doesn't necessarily. Oh yeah, Ohio has one like this. That's on the. It's not on the books. It's on the table. But it includes the full spectrum from if you have a picture that your ex gave you voluntarily and you post it online, to all the way up to if you steal a picture from somebody's phone, or you have stolen a picture from somebody somehow, like their computer, you went to their house, they had it in the house, and you stole it from the house, or whatever, all the way down to an image that has been drawn or painted, cartooned in some way or another, that depicts something that, if it was real people, would be illegal.
Wow.
So yeah, they're really broad with that, and they're not the only state. But
That's that brings to mind the the cartoonist that drew Muhammad, and yeah, this is where we're going with this now.
I think they're going after Lolly, which I'm sorry, but and I don't really, I'm not a fan of that kind of thing, right? I don't really think much of it, but I don't care.
Yeah,
because it's pictures of somebody drew. Yeah, if that's what you're really into, then I think you need help. Okay.
Yeah.
As people, right? But if you're upset about the depiction in that image, then you should be so upset about what's happening in real life that you should be engaging in some kind of activism, even if it's just donating to organizations that do something to help actual trafficked and sexually abused children. Like the real ones with flesh bodies that have hearts and minds and feel pain and are traumatized by that shit, and not a picture that somebody drew. Because there are other ways to address that. Like if your friend's doing that, you can say, hey, maybe you might want to talk to somebody about that. If they think it's edgy, then make fun of them for it. They won't think it's edgy anymore, and they'll stop, right? And if they think it's hot, then maybe talk to their families. Like, hey, this is kind of weird. Maybe your buddy your son, your brother, your daughter, your sister, or whatever needs some help. But in terms of police force, I would really rather see that reserved for helping actual individuals who have been victimized by other people.
Like, it's a huge problem in Britain and indeed most of Europe, where if you draw Muhammad, you're going to get killed. And indeed, the government might dox you and let everyone know where you live, just because you burned a Quran or something. But it needs to be pointed out that if you draw a picture of a woman that appears too sexy or whatever, I mean, it's not as bad as drawing a picture of Muhammad, but it's getting there because, Muslims worship Muhammad and Westerners worship women. It's an unfortunate state of affairs.
Well, they all worship women.
Yeah, indeed. We're getting to the point where if you draw a picture of a woman, you could get arrested. Because a woman is a divine being, do you see? You cannot... no male hand can possibly draw a picture of a woman that could possibly reflect the true divine essence of a woman. So it's an affront to the divinity of women, and that's the same idea that prevents us from drawing Muhammad, because Muhammad is perfect. Muhammad is the perfect man, and Allah is the perfect God. And if you attempt to draw either of them, then you go to the gulag. And...
Well, I mean, like they agree with it until they don't, right? Like Jessica Rabbit, I'm sure sparked controversy when she came about, but you don't really see people pointing at Jessica Rabbit and saying, "Ooh, look at this! This needs to be canceled."
Not at the time, anyway.
No, but if anything, it's the existence of OnlyFans just proves that women are perfectly fine with being objectified as long as they're getting paid for it.
Yeah. And in terms of, all of the stuff that this would address in terms of like revenge porn and stuff like that. Like I said, state laws are starting to address that, and every state's probably going to end up having them because it does give the state some power. So the legislators are going to jump on that. But this is way overly broad. Just it impacted how, like, for instance, early on in my career on Twitter, I could call it that, I guess. I've been doing this since 2009 on Twitter. Although not all of that time was men's activism. Like, so a lot of it was just me being a smartass. But along about 2010, when I started networking with other people online over due process issues, because of the 7 Years in Hell story, which if for anybody who's, like I said, never listened to us before, go to avoiceformen.com, look up my name, Hannah Wallen, and 7 Years in Hell, and you'll find it. The description will mention the domestic violence industry, or DV industry, and it's a hell of a story. It's a story of malicious prosecution and vexatious litigation being used in a custody case, and it's insane. I use that word a lot when describing these issues because nothing about them makes sense if you have any rationality to you at all. It only makes sense to feminists, right? But early on in arguing these kinds of issues with people on Twitter back in the day, I was told by another woman that I should get raped so I'd know what it was like. That was just a suggestion she made, out there, along with, you should get your hair done, get your nails done, go get raped so you'll know what it's like, that kind of thing, right? Some women are traumatized by hearing stuff like that. I'm just kind of yeah, whatever. It's not really having somebody tell me something like that. It's the closest I've run into to boring in an argument. It's not very creative in terms of insults and stuff like that. So
no one's ever told me to go and get raped. It's not possible in my country.
Yeah, that's true.
So it doesn't occur to people as an insult that you should go and get raped by a woman, because there's apparently no such thing.
Yeah.
And men are supposed to like that type of thing, right? Even if you're a 13-year-old boy and you're gross-looking, however-year-old teacher is coming on to you and making advances and grooming you and then actually physically engaging in sexual activities, which I don't know why I am sugarcoating that, but that's rape.
Yep.
It's rape.
Yep. I had a teacher in my school that did that.
It's state-sanctioned rape.
Actually, I had two teachers at my school that did that. One
even worse than rape.
One did it to a female and one did it to a male. The teacher that did it to a female went to jail. Teacher that did it to a male went to teach at another school.
Jesus.
I didn't find out about it until later. I don't know where she went. So there wasn't a whole lot I could do about it. But when I found that out, I said, now wait a minute. Because, one of my coaches did this with an 18-year-old and went to jail. And she did this with an underage boy and went to teach at another school. So, and yeah, if she had become pregnant, he would have been on the hook for child support.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, this idea of impacted just like blows my mind too, because that's a situation where that's subjective, right? Was I impacted when somebody said you should get raped so you'd know what it was like? Not really. I enjoyed making fun of them for saying that, actually. I made fun of them quite widely among a large set of people because it was kind of hilarious that they thought that was going to hit me like a ton of bricks or something. Oh, this thing that I'm terrified of should happen to you. But I mean, when you've been through something already, you already know how bad it's going to be. You already know, kind of what to expect from it. And as scary and unfun, as awful as it can be, just like people who've been through a house fire, it's not as scary to have someone yell at you as it was to face it. So it doesn't have that kind of impact. Right? Oh, I hope your house burns down. Too late. That has never happened to me, thank goodness. But and the house I grew up in couldn't burn down anyway. It was brick. It could burn, but not. It'd still be standing. But yeah, so this strikes me as like, what do they mean by impact, and what do they mean by violence? Because obviously, if we're talking shit like that, it's not violence. It's not violent to say something like that to somebody. It's rude, right?
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't even fully call it violent. There were a couple of guys from A Voice for Men when we were all doxxed, and our addresses were published all over Twitter back in the day, and they refused to take them down for like 3 days before they finally did anything about it. And it was actually because one of the guys, they doxed his daughter's kindergarten, and so he contacted police, and police decided that it was worth actually contacting Twitter. Yeah, this was back when there was contact information on the website with a customer service number and a set of contact information for law enforcement. For a while there wasn't. That allowed them to get in touch and say, hey, this is going on. We need to know more information about this individual because this individual is now threatening a 5-year-old. But then they took it all down. Oh, that's gone. We deleted it. Sorry. Right. But in the meantime, there were a couple of guys from A Voice for Men who were sent to their personal email addresses videos of Al-Qaeda beheading prisoners with the title, "This Should Happen to You." That didn't happen to any of the women. Nobody sent us anything like that. But they did send that to the men. And, nobody called that harassment, right? It's not harassment to send beheading videos to a dude and say, this should happen to you. But apparently, and it wasn't harassment to tell me that I should get raped so I would know what it was like, right? But if a woman lies on the internet and you call her out on it, hey, that's not true. Here's what the truth is. And she just happens to be running for political office. That's harassment. You can't correct her. Sorry. Like, that's what's going to end up happening with this kind of stuff. And this was $6 million. Gen Xers, this is the bionic, the bionic grant.
And it's worth pointing out that all of this U.S. aid that y'all are pulling out of existence, like, that's all well and good, but as long as you continue to fund this feminist nonsense, and that's what's going on in every university and every college across not just the country but across the West, it's just going to keep coming back. Like, you think you're fixing this?
No.
Because you're fixing the tendrils of the problem, the leaves of the problem. But the seeds of the problem are still there. Like, every university in the West is still teaching everyone that that men oppress women everywhere and always have. And that's why the federal government is sending all this money to these other places, because they think men oppress women everywhere and always have, and they want to fix this problem. And like, part of me wants to just shake Trump and Elon by the lapels of their suit and just be like, yes, thank you, but like this problem's going to keep coming back until you solve the root of the problem, and the root of the problem is men oppress women everywhere and always have. Like, I don't know if that's an official government position, but it seems to be an official cultural position. Like, you think you're solving things in the Middle East with all this stuff, but as long as you're pandering to women are going to keep saying, but we need to help those people who aren't like us. And that's we talk about things like the left and the right, but what often comes from the left and the right is actually just a result of prioritizing women over men. Men are able to police each other's behavior. They do it without being prompted. They have this they have this compulsion to police one another's behavior. Women don't have this compulsion to police one another's behavior. They have this compulsion to police men's behavior.
There's one context in which women police each other's behavior, and then they accuse men of doing it. And that would be what women or feminists like to call slut-shaming. They do it, and then they blame men. But, yeah, go ahead.
No, yeah, that's a good takeoff from where I was saying. But women are called sluts because they fraternize with men too often. And men are called incels when they don't fraternize enough with women. And I don't know how to get this across to the likes of Trump and Elon. I mean, I'm not going to complain because they're doing a pretty good job. But it's going to be a long time before they can really get to grips with what we're talking about. Like, we have a lot of problems with the government funding anything that that pertains to other peoples rather than our own peoples. I call it oikophobia often, for the sake of brevity. But yeah, they're dealing with the symptoms, and I praise them for dealing with the symptoms. But if they don't deal with the causes, then the symptoms are going to keep recurring.
Yep, they'll just keep coming back. And
Yeah.
the cause is a bit of a conundrum for our society because it's been in place for so long that people think that it is a natural human instinct. It's existed since about the 13th century. It was kind of invented by 13th century French aristocrats. And that would be Gynocentrism, which people often mislabel a focus on the family as Gynocentrism. But the woman is not the whole family. The mother is not the whole family. And for every woman who got offended by hearing that, that's your narcissism speaking. Gynocentrism is female narcissism. It is female narcissism writ large and spread wide when it becomes cultural gynocentrism. And cultural gynocentrism is a dominant focus in our culture on women, the welfare of women, in pretty much everything. So instead of focusing on the importance of children's health, for instance, when women decided that they wanted trans kids as purse puppies, all of a sudden it was perfectly normal to start cutting parts off of your child. Right? All of a sudden, it was perfectly normal to buy your kid weird underwear to make them feel like the opposite sex. And to convince the child to have dysphoria they were not already experiencing. Right? Kind of like reverse conversion therapy. When women don't love their husbands anymore and they want out of the relationship and they decide they want to move on completely, the court will actually sever the relationship between the father and the children to a large degree by separating them for most of the time. And all that matters is his wallet. They don't care that this is detrimental to the health and welfare of the children, to their future, to their development, to everything about them, as long as the woman's happy. That is cultural gynocentrism. Right? Even children don't come first.
Men and women generally get along in nature. I mean, they have to. They've always had to. It's the government is the one that's thrown a wrench into this relationship. It seems obvious to most of us, but it's still not obvious even to the MAGA base. We're still fighting, dare I call it, an uphill battle. But all of these problems have stemmed from the from this division between men and women, and well, I guess that's just another iteration of communism.
Yep.
Like it started with this division between the rich and the poor, but then the movers and shakers realized that you could cause much more damage if you create a rift between men and women, and then you don't even need to bother with a rift between the rich and the poor. If you really want to fuck a country up, start with the men and the women, and then you can control everyone, and that's how it's worked. That's really how it's worked for the last 100 years.
Yep, and it started by corrupting women. Because, women were supposed to watch out for men the way that men watch out for women. And what ended up happening was women decided men shouldn't be watching out for women. And instead of watching out for men, they watched out for themselves. But in the way they watched out for themselves was looking out for number one. And that's how we ended up where we are today. Where it's more politically incorrect to let women make absolute fools of themselves and stumble and fall and have terrible lives because of it, and then pay them for making stupid choices, than it is to say, your life's going to be a lot happier if you don't do this one dumb idea. Whenever they come up to a set of choices that includes that one really dumb idea that seems like it might be a lot of fun in the moment. Like screwing around with a bunch of different guys. Or going to college before you have figured out what you want to do with your life. But yeah. So this particular organization, this doesn't seem like a big thing, right? I mean, it does. It's $6 million, but we know that there are things that have gotten hundreds of millions of dollars in funding and so on. There's a lot of variety in what gets funded. But when you look at what they're planning and who this company is, what they do, it might change your mind on this a little bit. So it says this activity will... where is it? This activity will pilot practical approaches to preventing, mitigating, and responding to TFGBV. So remember, that's technology facilitated... where is it here? Something violence. gender-based violence. Technology facilitated gender-based violence in a set of countries with diverse development contexts, including internet penetration, meaning they're going to run internet campaigns to do this, which could be as little as a meme campaign, and they're getting paid for it. Language, religion, regional and language diversity will analyze, synthesize, and share learning from the pilot activities with a broader community of practice working to address it. So everything they pick up from the first campaign they're going to use in future campaigns. And their goal will ultimately be mitigation, prevention, and response, including towards women in politics and blah, 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 and gaining practical comparative knowledge into what types of programming are effective to inform global efforts to combat this problem. So they're essentially trying to set up a system where they use various approaches, including changing common language, and basically pushing at the Overton window, and policy changes to internet campaigns. To, when they say internet penetration, they may be talking about working with social media to censor the internet, or censor people, where the idea is, you can't say that because it's harassment. You can't talk because you said something wrong, and so on, right? So who are these people? This is their page on gender equality. For more than 5 decades. This is a really entrenched organization, people. For more than 5 decades, PACT has worked hand in hand with communities around the world to address the root causes of gender inequality, empower women and girls, and foster inclusion.
It took more than 5 decades and they still haven't fucking figured it out. You still haven't gotten a handle on this? Mm-hmm. Jesus Christ. That's hilarious to me. I'm sorry.
Oh, yeah. Here we have, let's see, they have their spiel about rights and opportunities and women in education. So, 1 in 3 women has experienced violence. Nearly half of married women lack decision-making power, blah, blah, blah. 178 countries still have legal barriers that prevent women's full economic participation. So they're monitoring, like, the whole world this way. And
why are they using the same measuring stick for all of the entire world? Like, we are not, there are differences within each and every country that make this just not really attainable or necessarily, it's not the same across the board, but they're using the same measuring stick. I understand, but I don't understand.
Because, and this will tell you right here, PACT's expertise, and we'll just highlight this. I hope it's showing in the window properly. I'm not sure. I'm going to look here. We're going to raise it a little more. There we go. PACT's expertise includes women's economic empowerment, health empowerment and equality, gender-based violence, climate change mitigation and adaptation,
oh God,
capacity strengthening civic engagement, conflict mitigation, natural resource management, labor rights, responsible mining, and more. In other words, they're communists.
Mm-hmm.
So this is a communist organization, which most feminist organizations are.
Mm-hmm.
It's a communist organization getting U.S. government funding to export feminist communism around the world. So there we go. That's who they are, and they have had this. They've been around for this long, so I thought, all right, I want to look a little more. This is the let's see if this has PACT Incorporated this past year got 30.7 million from 6 transactions. I hate that it's doing this thing where that pop-down screen, a lot of websites do that, and it's really annoying. If you're a web designer out there watching this, please understand, I fucking hate you guys for doing this. I love everything else about the internet, more than I love this. Well, maybe not some things, right? The illegal things. But this drives me nuts. All right. So, in any case, this is Pact Incorporated. In the last 12 months, got $30 million from 6 transactions for a variety of things. And they've gotten money. This goes back to 2012. So they've gotten money repeatedly. In 2022, they got a shit ton of money. $164.9 million.
Jesus Christ.
In 2020, they got $115.2 million.
I don't even understand. How do you even spend that much money in a year? I don't want to know. I don't want to know what they're doing with it.
And they did get money from USAID. Yeah. Now, I will point out, they do other things. All right. The question is, in doing them, because here we have a grant for $84 million. Here's one for $58 million. Here's one for $32 million.
My God.
26,
Dude,
22,
what?
21.
I want
every one of these more than $10 million, right?
I want the receipts. I want the receipt. What does it take to do something like that?
Now listen,
right?
Those are the contracts, right? 9 contracts, 108 grants, 1 direct payment, and 3 other to this company. So I started looking, right? So the one contract, this one that is, see if this is the one I'm thinking of. Yeah, I hate that it does this. All right, so this one is the one that ends in 005. It's not the one I'm thinking of. So this one that ends in 005 has to do with orphans. Let me see if I can find, or in 004 has to do with orphans. Let me see if I can find that one, because I looked at a bunch of different ones. There it is. Okay. This is from USAID. Right, and it sounds initially like, oh, well, at least they're doing something good here. And to a degree, it would be if it was what it sounded like. So we scroll down. Maybe I passed it. There's a thing that says, there's a description that it should come up.
It just said description right there.
Oh, did I miss it?
A little bit
there we go.
further
Okay.
down.
Yeah, it's short. Okay. Yeah, that's why it makes it sound good, because it's short. To procure technical assistance to support the South African Department of Social Welfare to increase services for orphans and vulnerable children.
Why the fuck?
Yeah, and I can see though a lot of people going, "Oh, I can be so sympathetic to African orphans, and therefore we should be funding this," which I don't agree that we should be funding it. I think that it's perpetuating the problem instead of solving it.
Right. You know, and
there
what
are better
I'm sorry.
ways to help prevent children from being orphaned in Africa.
The thing that really just grinds my fucking gears is, the same people, like, I agree. We shouldn't be funding wars, right? We shouldn't be doing that.
Right.
But then we also fund things like the victims, I would assume that these orphans would be victims of, whatever conflict is going on. And this is fine. That's fine. That's
Except,
fine.
Wait for it. Yeah, wait for it. So, what do they do for orphans? PACT recently helped build the capacity of South Africa's Department of Social Development to better support orphans and vulnerable children, right, including those affected by abuse, neglect, or exploitation, specifically exploitation, meaning
meaning what we're doing to them?
There are pedos in Africa too. Like the United States and rich countries are not the only places where there are pedos.
Well, right, but
fortunately for people in third world countries, they were more likely to get the opportunity to get revenge. Parents want revenge, and I can't blame them for that. But let's continue with this really quick. Specifically, our efforts strengthen the department's response to HIV. Right. So here they mention abuse, neglect, and exploitation. Right. So they're strengthening the department's response to HIV. So I can tell you a very easy way to prevent children from getting HIV due to being molested. Can anybody guess how the best possible way to stop children from contracting HIV from getting molested would be? What would you do to prevent that? I think Mike has a usual answer to that.
He's outside smoking.
Oh.
Yeah, I do wish it was. But I'm sorry. I'm just so angry at the whole entire situation.
You can tell I'm angry because I've got the angry laugh. But
go after the people who are molesting these children.
yeah, stop them from getting molested. That would be the answer.
What? Huh?
Prevent the molestation, and then they will not get HIV from being molested. That would solve the problem right there.
It's like the whole circumcision prevents sexually transmitted diseases.
Interesting. Yeah, you should bring that up.
Oh no!
Yeah. So in this isn't the only place, but in Eswatini, a pact-led Umliba Aloya Mbili project, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, I'm probably butchering the hell out of it, strengthened the capacity of local partners to scale up OVC services for vulnerable adolescents and HIV prevention services for AGYW through a social asset approach using AG clubs and YW small sessions. The project reached 50,000 AGYW. Project partners also reached adolescent boys with HIV and gender-based violence prevention and education, links to HIV testing, and referrals for voluntary medical circumcision.
Oh my God.
So that let's go back to this. All right. Yeah, wrong page. Where was it? The grant activity that we just looked at. There we go. $84 million for that program.
Oh my God.
Right? $84 million to tell boys to get circumcised so they won't get AIDS when they get molested by adult women. Or men.
Protect yourself by slicing off a part of your dick so that when you're inevitably just raped by some bitch that you don't get HIV. And none of that is how that works. Like, none of that. It's all a hard pill to swallow. And I mean, especially when you account for the dollar exchange rate in some of these places, like 84 million or whatever millions translate into much more money when you go into these other countries. And again, I need to understand. Well, I mean, we know what happens, right? Like, most of this money goes towards the people in the positions, right? Most of it does not trickle down to the people, the actual people who they are intending for this thing to assist.
Yeah. There is only one surefire way to prevent getting infected with STIs. And that is a very conservative approach to sexual relationships, right?
Mm-hmm.
We know that promiscuity increases the risk of the infections being spread around. Just the same as if you really wanted to prevent flu from spreading quickly around the country, you would encourage homeschooling.
Mm-hmm.
Right? In fact, if you go back to the first really big plague to hit the U.S., was when it started to become a lot more widespread for children to be going and sitting in classrooms together every day. Not that it didn't exist before then. There were schools before then.
Yeah.
But there was a lot more during the early part of the 20th century. There was a great deal of increase. And, when you see now that it's pretty much standard for flu viruses and pneumonia and every kind of cold there is, ordinary coronavirus that's not COVID-19. And now, of course, COVID-19 is going to do it too. Everything goes around. Norovirus, RSV, all that shit goes around every year. And it goes through the schools. And it goes through the retail establishments. Because people lick their fingers and count their money. Or they pick their nose and touch their credit card. Or they touch the merchandise, People cough and sneeze on things. Some of that stuff's airborne. And since we have people gathering a lot, you have cold and flu going through, right? We know that about human contact in every other element of human life. They tell you to stay home from work if you're sick. Don't go to church if you're sick. Keep your kid home from school if they're sick, right? Don't have sex with other people if you're sick. Seems like a bridge too far. Don't sleep around like a $3 hoe if you're sick. Why is that a bridge too far? Don't get an education today if you're sick. It's not a bridge too far. But don't sleep around like a $3 hoe today. Like, that's a bridge too far? Tell me again why you don't believe, folks, in cultural gynocentrism as a thing. And why you think it's natural. Because I'm calling bullshit. Right? So, yeah, instead we're gonna tell young men in foreign countries, hand over that foreskin. We're totally not gonna sell it to be used in makeup and remedies for people going bald and shit. No, it's so it'll protect you from AIDS. Totally protect you from AIDS. Research shows that you might be more at risk of getting herpes from believing that you're protected because you got circumcised. But, that's beside the point, right? Like, and this isn't the first program like this they've done. They've been doing programs like this in Africa for longer than any of my kids has been alive. I'm a grandma, by the way, just so you know. I was reading about this kind of program in Africa before I got together with my husband. So this is quite a issue. There's a bunch of other things that they do with this money as well. So it's not all of that money going to circumcision, but that is part of the deal, and it is part of the expenditures that you are paying for as part of the American public, right? And there's more of these, right? There's the same pact, sustainable peace activity. It says with TEC amount of $20 million for 5 years. This one is from. This is from USAID. And then we have, let's see, we looked at that one. I think this is the one we already looked at. Yeah. These might be the same one. I might have opened this twice. Yep, I did. I think. Yep. But they had a bunch of different things that were like that. There's another issue with regard to the kids that are being trafficked. Like, we've seen some evidence over the last few months that the American government has not done an excellent job of preventing child trafficking by its own agencies.
Of course not.
Like,
why
right.
would they do that?
Like, we've seen some evidence that children have been placed illegally in areas where they should not be placed, with people who didn't necessarily have the right interest in them and so on. Some of them were considered to be misplaced during that time. Right? They lost them.
I'm sorry, I don't know. It's not like losing your fucking glasses, right? Like,
just laid the child down on the counter and walked away, and then when I went,
I
couldn't remember where I set him.
Oh my god.
Yeah. So, I don't know.
Shit.
I like when we're funding non-government organizations doing this stuff, and you can't even ask questions. Like, it just came out today that USAID won't even answer questions about what's being done with the money that they're shelling out.
Oh. Yeah, no, they answer questions. No, that would require some level of accountability that they are not willing to part with. And no, I mean, shit. And after the funding has been seized, they probably can't even afford to answer their phones.
Yeah. So I really want to know, like, what I understand they think that you have to cut off part of your foreskin if you're a man and you want to avoid AIDS. What do you got to cut off to avoid USAID? Just asking, what do you got to cut off if you want to avoid USAID? Because
asking for the second S is silent.
Asking
by the
for
way,
a
guys.
shitload of friends.
Yes, just a few 100 million.
Yep. But
damn.
we have more. All right, that's just one. That's one thing. We just went through the first one. Right.
I hate them. I hate these people.
Now we're going through the Department of Justice. So this is not USAID. Okay, the Department of Justice funded a company called Taller Salud Incorporated, and they got $656,277 out of $2 million so far.
Does it say where these companies are based out of?
This one is in the United States.
This is us. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So the total funding for this is $2 million. This is long. So here we go.
Wait a minute. I'm sorry, because I think a lot of people are thinking that this is U.S. money that is going to foreign companies. However, seems like every time I'm looking, they seem to be funding people right here in the U.S.
A lot of it is U.S. money going to U.S. companies to do things in foreign countries, but some of it is U.S. money going to U.S. companies to do things in the U.S.
Right. That and even if they are doing things in foreign companies, are they ever going to be held? Well, I mean, I guess now what we're doing is holding them accountable, but they were operating for forever up until now, as though there's no one looking at this stuff. There's no one paying attention and counting the beans as to where all of this money is going. So I would love to.
We're going to be pursuing this for a few weeks. I think we can, since a lot of what I want to talk about with regard to Iran is history. This is something, this takes precedence because it's happening right now. It's timely, and it's stuff that, these are receipts that we have for things that we have been told, y'all are crazy for saying this shit is happening, when in fact it's happening.
It was right there.
It's right there. And it's been happening. Yep. It's not, this is just from last year, right? You saw the organization that we just talked about had years behind it of government funding, and before they had government funding through this system, they existed for, what'd they say, over 50 years. Right?
5+ decades.
5+ decades. That's how I could describe my life, as being barely over 5 decades. right? So
I'm
they've been
almost at
around
5
longer
decades.
than we have.
Yeah. Yeah. Trying to
Um,
fight this invisible boogeyman
yeah.
that only exists because they say that it's there, that it's true. And oof.
Yup. So, by the way, Meredith G gave us $5 for HBR Talk 341 and said, "Do not be shocked at the organizations that will pop up related to USAID. It is estimated that the Clintons got about 80 million out of the organization." I'm not surprised. In fact, I'm surprised it's not more than that.
Yeah, no, not at all. And I'm
especially-
sure they. Go ahead.
So, especially considering the Haiti
Yeah,
stuff.
yeah, absolutely. I mean, they have their own freaking foundation that they were funneling money through. And then also on top of that, keep in mind that USAID is only. This is the first stone that they're overturning and uncovering all of these worms. Just imagine what they're going to find out if they ever, I mean, I don't know how long it's going to take to dig through this pile of garbage.
We are looking at the glint on the edge of the tip of the iceberg.
Oh yeah. I'm hopeful that there's enough time. 4 years does not seem like enough for them to actually uncover the full gamut of the actual wasteful government spending that
they're going to
we
need
do.
a long time.
They're going to need a long time.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. I'm trying to be optimistic that whoever comes into office after Trump is gonna, maintain this and keep the fire lit under these people's asses. Or maybe this is just a house of cards that comes tumbling down.
Yeah.
When you just flick the one. I mean, it would be nice, but I just don't see it happening that way. That would be too easy, right? It would be too satisfying for that to happen. It's just these things are not going to happen overnight, right? This exposure is going to take a while for everything to come to light. And even still after that, it's going to take even longer than that for people to accept that they've been lied to for almost their whole lives.
And what we've got going on is there's a lot of them that are actually in government right now that are fighting this too.
Yeah. I mean, but not only being lied to about what your government is doing, but also the fact that their money is being taken from them to fund this shit.
Yeah. And it's actually, people don't realize everything that's being funded, and there will be people that won't want to know. There's that phenomenon where when somebody wants to maintain a feel about being on a particular team politically, they will bury their head and they will hide from information that contradicts their narrative, and they'll turn around and call you a liar for promoting that information, even though the reason that they don't know about the information or that they think it hasn't been proved is because they won't look at the receipts.
Right. It's like the people who defend circumcision, even knowing that, even if they're presented with the information that this is harmful, it doesn't protect your son from getting any kind of STI. It's not cleaner. It's just easier.
It's just meaner. It does no good, only harm.
Right. But they will still defend it tooth and nail because, they don't. No man wants to be penis shamed. Right. They obviously you love your body, right? And so even if it happened to you, you will defend it. You will defend the choices because, I'm happy with my body. But that doesn't mean that every man that's had it done is necessarily happy with the results, right? There are men who understand that there is something that has been taken from them that they can never, ever, ever get back.
Yeah.
And they're just completely upended by it. You know what I mean?
I have known people in my life who were born without body parts. I had a friend at church, much older than me, so not a close friend. Just she was everybody's friend. She was a sweetheart, and she was just nice to everybody. But she was missing one hand from birth. There was no accident. It just was the way she was born. And her wrist came to a little ball at the end, and she almost had, there was like a, it wasn't like a belly button there, but it was definitely a skin fold there. From, they had done some surgery for cosmetic purposes because of the way that it looked when she was young, if I understand correctly. I could have that part wrong. But she was not injured. She was born that way. And she was just as able to do anything that the rest of us could do as we were. Like, she didn't seem to even be handicapped by not having one of her hands. She was happy. She had a great time. And I bet you if you asked her, did she resent her situation, she would say no. She loved her body, just the same as everybody loves theirs. There was nothing about her body that made her unattractive. She was a very pretty girl, actually. And, a lot of the boys in the church paid her a lot of attention. When there was a social activity, she was never alone. Ivan BSGO says, thalidomide baby? I don't think so. I think that was after thalidomide. But it was similar to the way thalidomide birth injuries would look, except that it was her wrist instead of being much higher up. But I don't think that's what caused it. But in any case, the point is, should we all cut off our hand because she was comfortable with her body the way it was? Because that makes about as much sense as cutting off your foreskin, your child's foreskin, because you're comfortable having had yours cut off. Like, that's how I think about it. Right? It's flesh that has a purpose. It's not abnormal for it to be there. It's abnormal for it to be cut off. And just because there's nothing wrong with you doesn't mean that there's nothing wrong with inflicting it on somebody else without giving them the opportunity to refuse. So, but in any case, we're going to get on with this. This is a different... I don't think this one was about circumcision. This was about something else. Taller Salud, TS Incorporated, is a feminist, culturally specific, non-profit organization founded in 1979. So, quite a while ago, guys.
Jesus Christ.
In 1979, I was 7? Yeah, I would have been 7.
I was 1.
I was a first grader.
Depending on what part of the year. I mean, I was born in December, so 1979 was my first year on the planet.
Yep. With a 42-year trajectory of violence prevention and health promotion community work, TS launched Puerto Rico's first community violence intervention program and holds a 10-year track record of implementing the island's only community violence intervention program, Acuerdo de Paz, or the Peace Accords, or just Peace Accords. Peace Accords uses highly trained violence interrupters and street outreach workers, public education campaigns such as those addressing structural racism, and here we have in a document about funding from the U.S. government to an organization, Toxic Masculinities. Yep. Behavioral and workforce services, community mobilization. So they end up getting involved in people's jobs. They end up going out into the community and engaging with people in public. They serve a minimum of 40 young males, aged 15 to 30, residents of the region every year with violence interruption. conflict mediation, behavioral, education, employment, and community outreach activities. And they're getting $2 million for this.
So wait a minute, they fight toxic masculinity with toxic masculinity? They use men to fight this idea of toxic masculinity. I mean, men and governmental dollary dues, obviously. But it's just a bunch of fucking gobbledygook, right? Structural racism. What the fuck do you mean by that? What does that mean? And you ask people and they cannot explain it. Oh, well, it's just, because the system says and blah, 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 blah. And it absolutely means nothing. It means nothing. Racism is something that affects you, the personal individual, in your own brain, right? Because I don't give a damn what somebody thinks about me and the color of my skin, right? I don't know if you've seen recently that this black chick who's up on CNN complaining because she's got 4 degrees, she's got doctorates and all this other shit. And even at the White House, she holds all these positions with all these fucking doctorates, and I was the least paid out of all of them. Well, I'm sorry, that just means that either, number one, all of those papers that you put up on your wall mean absolutely nothing more than the fucking paper that they're written on, or 2, you are not worth the money. Well, you're worth, the money that you get is the money that you are worth, right? And if you feel that you're...
Or she just really fucking sucks at negotiating.
Yeah, thank you. Right? But it's not, the onus never falls on the individual. It is always pushed off to the people around them. Right? Like, it's not my fault. It's never their fault. It's never their fault. Well, bitch, why did you spend so much time and so much money trying to get all of these degrees, and now you're worried about how much money that you have? And a lot of it is really just a comparison to what they feel are their peers, right? You don't earn the same amount of money as someone who's been at this company for maybe 10 years or longer, and you just walk in the door, you think because you have all of these degrees that you are worth all of this money. Well, absolutely not. What do you bring to the table? It's never...
No. See, she's a woman. So remember, even though it's
not
wrong
only
to objectify women, she is the table.
Right.
And that's not objectifying her at all, calling her an object.
Right. No, she's not just the table. She's the black table. And I'm a black woman, and I'm speaking. And so you got to listen to me as if anything that's coming out of her mouth means anything. Really all of these people, what they have to contribute is just the fact that they're a black woman. Well, what does that mean? Absolutely nothing, right? Because and I'm sorry, I'm going off on this chick because that just really, really fucking grinds my goddamn gears. She's complaining about the people that hired her, right? But she's blaming it on Trump.
Oh my god.
She's blaming it.
It's been in there for how many days?
Not even a month.
Not even a month.
How many weeks? Not even. Right? But it's
blame the new guy. It's always the new guy.
It's the Republicans' fault. Oh my god, I can't manage. Well, she doesn't look unfed. Okay, she's got on clothes, her hair is done, she looks like they didn't just pick her up off the fucking homeless camp. Okay, and I'm sorry, but fuck you, bitch, because there are so many more men who are way more qualified to be in the position that you are in right now. And she's still complaining.
Yep.
She's still complaining. So I have zero sympathy. Zero.
Yeah, I can't blame you for that. So just want to remind everybody, when we talked about this, right, when we looked at this, when we initially looked at the top here, remember I pointed out it wasn't USAID. So the United States Department of Justice paid for this program. Paid for this program to inundate Puerto Rico with training about toxic masculinity, with the idea of toxic masculinity, to infect Puerto Rican men with fear of toxic masculinity. And then that's how they're going to prevent violence. They're not going to prevent it by ending the actual conditions that lead to neighborhood violence or the conditions that lead to domestic violence. Nope, they're just going to blame toxic masculinity and structural racism.
Right. No, you couldn't pay people to clean up Puerto Rico, right? Remember Trump called it a shithole? We can't pay people to actually make the place a livable place to be, right? Like you couldn't fix those conditions, but oh my God, somehow you're going to spend millions of dollars to tap into the hearts and minds of all of these men who can barely fucking make it, right? They are struggling as well, but oh no, what they need to do post haste is stop and worry about the whammon.
Yep.
That's gonna fix the country.
Talk about their feelings.
That's gonna fix the whole thing.
Telling them that they need to talk about their feelings is totally gonna get them to do it, right? Mm-hmm. So,
I mean, have you ever have they ever met a Latino man? They are some of the most stoic people I have ever met in my life. They are machismo all the fucking way, right?
Yeah,
they are
it's not necessarily a bad
manly
thing.
men. No,
not
absolutely
necessarily
not.
Bad at all.
Absolutely not. And that is why they don't understand why they lost the Latino vote. Because that is the true nature of the Latino men, the population, not just the men. You know, you can't sissify them. You can't shame them into being less masculine. That's never going to fly with Latinos, a true Latino, no matter what country they come from.
Well, and if it does, it's not necessarily healthy, right? This is something else that
it's artificial.
Right. This is something else that I've tried to explain to people more than once, by the way. I've tried to explain this to people about stoicism. Right? It's not it's not a cut and dried thing, right? It's not black and white. Being stoic is bad and not being stoic is good. That's not the way that it is. Mm-hmm. For instance, so let's say you're in a house fire. Like I brought up house fire before, but let's say you're in a house fire. And let's say it's a pretty big house. So you have rooms on either side of you. You have rooms in front of you, and you have rooms behind you, and you're in a hallway surrounded by all those rooms. And there is smoke everywhere. You can hear the fire. It is incredibly hot. You can't see because it's dark. Fire's not actually bright when you're inside, down underneath everything. You can't breathe. You're on the ground crawling, and you are fucking terrified that you're going to die right now. Mm-hmm. Right? And you're about to have a panic attack. You can feel yourself on the edge of hyperventilating. Right? The smartest thing you can do in that moment is, if you have any stoicism within you, you drag that up to the surface and you use it to breathe as best you can with your shirt over your mouth, and to crawl in the direction of your floor plan that you've made to get out of your building and to get out of that fire. Because if you panic, you lose precious seconds. Mm-hmm. And you die. You asphyxiate. Right. You don't have any time at all to panic. I had to learn that when I was a toddler, not because of a house fire, but because of an asthma attack. You have to be calm when you're having an asthma attack. If you are not calm, if you have a panic attack on top of an asthma attack, you can suffocate yourself to death.
Mm-hmm.
And my first serious near-death asthma attack happened when I was just under 2 years old. And my community did not have its own trauma center. There was no place in my area for my parents to take me. They had to drive from... We lived outside of Wapakoneta to... We had to drive to Lima, Ohio. And it was normally like a 20 to 30 minute drive. And, my parents had to stay calm, right? Because if they panicked and it cost precious seconds, I would have suffocated.
Yeah.
And they had to keep me calm. Well, they packed me into the car, and my dad drove ambulance speed. He had been an ambulance driver when he was younger, down County Road 91, on the way up to Lima, and he had to not panic when the cop pulled up behind him, and he had to not panic and pull over when the cop pulled up beside him, and the cop had to not give in to his anger at my dad for not pulling over when he looked over into the car to see what was going on. For that cop to notice the little blue-faced kid in the passenger seat hanging over her mom's shoulder. And he signaled to my dad. He pointed at him, and then he did this arcing signal with his finger forward. And the rest of the ride, I don't remember much because of how little I was and because I was oxygen deprived. What I do remember was going out to the car. I remember seeing the cops' lights coming up behind because they were weird. Oxygen deprivation distorts your vision after a while. And I remember going through town because before we would go under a light, there would be this woot woot woo, and then we would go under the light. And we went through Lima at 70 miles an hour in 35-mile-an-hour zones because that cop didn't get mad at having his authority bucked. He pulled around, drove us through. I remember this guy reaching in and pulling Mom and me out of the vehicle together. That was the other part that I really remember strongly. Because I wasn't able to breathe, and all of a sudden, I was being squeezed for a second. But he had to squeeze on me because Mom was pregnant. So after that, I passed out. But I would have been, and if they'd have been any later, I would have been dead. And if I'd have panicked, I'd have been dead. If my parents had panicked, I'd have been dead. If the cop had gotten angry instead of stoically stomaching the fact that he had been defied and evaluating the situation instead and doing the right thing, I'd have been dead. And so stoicism can be beneficial, right? It's not beneficial when you decide you're not going to grieve for your dying parents. And you try to hold it all in and you don't do anything. But the other end of stoicism that's really dealt with wrong by feminism is the how, right? I'm halfway in between the way a lot of guys I know grieve and the way a lot of gals I know grieve. Like, I've talked about what a great person my dad was and what a great person my mom was and what a great couple my parents were. And part of that's part of my grieving process, although I use it in an educational form here. And I cried a lot because I'm female and that's what we do, right?
Unfortunately, like sometimes just uncontrollably and involuntarily.
But that's not how everybody shows grief or pain. Right?
Yeah.
And just because, I said this on Twitter the other day. Women love there's this book about love languages, where your love language might be telling somebody how great they are all the time, or it might be giving them gifts all the time, or it might be doing things for them, bringing in their shoes when they need them, or giving them, making a particularly great meal and stuff like that, taking them out on dates, there's a bunch of different things, right? And that's just one emotion. That's just love. Right?
Yeah.
People have those kind of differences in expression for every emotion.
Yeah.
Right? I laugh when I'm shocked. Sometimes I laugh when I'm angry. It's not a pretty laugh. It's not cute, right? But it's definitely a laugh. It's not mistakable as anything else. And sometimes I laugh when I'm hurt. And it's a pathetic sounding laugh. All right.
I cry sometimes when I'm angry because I'm just so frustrated at my inability.
Right?
Yeah, like it's my inability to fix or change the situation immediately that just pushes me to the point of I don't know what, but
Right.
it's like nobody else can understand, at least that's what's going through my mind, right? Like, this is a situation that has to be fixed now, and I can't do it, and I don't want to ask for help. I don't want to ask other people to do it. I just want it to be done.
Yeah.
So, I totally relate.
Well, and sometimes, you can have more than one emotion going on at the same time. Like,
Yeah.
when I was grieving, I was angry. And I for the longest time, I kept telling people I can't get out of the anger stage of grief. I was wrong. I wasn't not getting out of the anger stage of grief. I was grieving, and I was going through those stages of grief, and I was also angry because of what happened to my parents. Because in my opinion, my parents were murdered. Right?
Yeah.
And I've talked about all that. But when I'm angry, and I want to process it, and I'm going to do that, right? I write. Because if I yell at people, it's really bad. Like, and I've combined it. Sometimes it's not that I've never combined these things. For instance, if you want to read how I write when I'm angry, read my article on honeybadgerbrigade.com titled "Fuck You, Amy Schumer," where at one point I was angry that she exploited rape victims as a weapon against a falsely accused man. That pissed me off. But
I remember that.
And I at one point I wrote in it something like, I called her a doe-eyed, lying, hypocritical, skunk fucking cunt. I was, like I said, I was mad. Yeah, so we process things in different ways. Men process grief differently than women do. Some men have some ways that overlap. Like if you take the Venn diagram of men processing grief and women processing grief, there's going to be some overlap, right? But where there's not, they're still processing it. They're just not speaking your grief language.
Yeah.
And that's okay. But feminists don't let it be okay. They talk about it like it's not happening, and the man needs to be doing something he's not doing, and it's wrong, and therefore he's got the toxic masculinity, and he must be cured of the toxic masculinity, and he has to get the talking stick and tell everybody how he feels, and it's going to make it all better, and not going to drag him through all that time of having to relive feelings in front of other people that maybe he doesn't want to share. That maybe they're not your business, So this thing with the toxic masculinity export, it's not as simple as these men are naturally or culturally very macho, and it's an infliction to take it away from them. It's toxic. The toxic masculinity narrative itself is flawed in a lot of ways, and that's one of them. And the way it talks about stoicism, and every single concept involved in how feminists label aspects of human character toxic masculinity is affected by that kind of black and white thinking. Right? Either in the form of this is always toxic or this is always masculine.
Yeah.
So, it's here we are talking about this Department of Justice funding $2 million to inflict that on just Puerto Rico. We could be talking about, other organizations like this.
I mean, shit. Give me $2 million, and I guarantee you'll have the same fucking outcome. Okay.
Like, we go back to that pact. Remember, they also focused on gender-based violence, and their area is all of Africa.
Mm-hmm.
And they're feminist.
All of Africa.
They're feminist. So, a feminist initiative
I would
across
love
Africa.
In my mind, I'm like imagining like Anita Sarkeesian going into like the Bush people and trying to tell them about the ways of our Lord and Jesus.
Yeah.
Whammon Christ. And how again, like, this shit just doesn't track. It doesn't fucking track. It is never. You cannot go into a country that has completely different societal norms, right, and expect that your U.S. American centric view of the world is going to, somehow take hold. I'm sorry, white women. I see the error of my ways. It's not ever gonna work. The only people that it will work on are the officials, the governmental officials who are receiving checks from this U.S. aid. Those are the only people who are going to entertain this argument at all. You will never be able to go boots on the ground and get the average citizen of any African country or any other, whatever, name a country, right? You're never going to be able to get them to go on board with your stupid fucking feminist fucking agenda. It's just not going to happen. And I will say this, in the places that you will, it's already something that they accept.
Yep.
So what are we really doing? We are just ladling cash over these countries, in an attempt to maybe make them think that we're an okay place. You know what I mean? Maybe they might like the America.
Well, it's to get in there before they start evolving culturally on that particular topic, and get the Duluth model in under the radar before they figure out that actually the more rational approach to domestic violence is to take that taboo against men hitting women and make it go both ways.
Right.
Because in most cultures, there's at least a little bit of a taboo against men hitting women, or against violence in general against women. And it's because men who are dedicated to a woman will protect her. And so violence against women ultimately ends up being violence between men.
Right.
So most cultures, they don't want that violence between men in the community. So they don't want a man to be violent toward a woman. And most cultures have some sort of legal response or community response to it as well. Even cultures where there's some degree of violence accepted, there's not just this unlimited, well, you can do whatever you want, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so every culture has an opening in its gynocentrism, for these people to come in with the American Duluth model that teaches the idea that violence is a culture-wide patriarchal attack on women to dominate and oppress women as a population, and that the individual man is just responsible for promoting that violence and that domination and oppression. Like that's basically what they're exporting, and they're paying millions to export that. So we looked at 2 today. We're going to look at briefly a third one, and this one is not funding the initiative. This initiative just got one of those COVID-19 loans. So you can see there it says includes COVID-19 spending. I believe this was entirely comprised of COVID-19 spending. This was a...
So wait a minute. So now, since Fauci has gotten his pardon, does that mean that we no longer have to abide by any of those fucking mandates?
I hope.
Can that be? Listen, I might. No, I'm gonna take that back. There is nothing that they could do to Fauci that would make me okay with what he did to this entire globe. There's never gonna be anything that will make me okay with that.
Yeah.
So yeah, no, I just wanted to say that, and you can go ahead.
This is our last one for the night. Before I go on, I'm going to read. We got some more chats. So Master Rogue gave us a $2 super chat and a $2 Rumble rant, and in both of them he said, "Hannah, Lauren," and in Rumble we also got a huggy emoji and a sparkling heart emoji, which was really cute. And then somebody gave it a thumbs up. So
very nice.
Yeah. So there we go. I can actually like those. So I clicked like on that one. So now we have reciprocated. But that was
suppose
really
I'm chopped liver.
we haven't. He hasn't
haven't
heard
been
you.
here.
He came in after
God
you started.
damn it.
After you left for cigarette. By the way, you can give me an answer right off the bat, I'm sure. We were talking about that organization. Let me return to. This was Pact. Pact Incorporated. That was trying to prevent the spread of AIDS among children in Africa who were sexually exploited, and their solution was circumcision. And I said I could think of a much simpler means of preventing children being sexually exploited in Africa from getting AIDS. And I'm sure that you have a 2-word solution for that. Be the same solution that that exists for any STI that children might get from being molested. How do you prevent children from getting STIs from being molested?
Don't molest children?
Yes.
I mean, that's...
You have advocated the same thing to prevent the molesters from having access over and over again. I figured you'd say it again. I'm always used to hearing wood chipper from you.
Yes, the wood. Feet first, please.
I didn't invent the concept of the wood chipper. Nor did I invent the concept of putting child molesters into the wood chipper.
No,
but I'm happy to be an advocate for it.
Yep.
Just as long as it's only being done with people who happily admit to their crimes. Like,
yeah.
I don't want to create a situation where innocent men will be fed into the wood chipper, because that's exactly the first thing that will happen. We unfortunately live in a world where a man who is simply accused of a thing will be fed into the wood chipper.
Yes.
Whereas a man who stabs 3 girls to death and also stabs another 8 girls to almost death will not be fed into the wood chipper. I just want to change this world.
Yeah.
So that Axel Rudikabana is indeed fed into the wood chipper.
You just want to use the wood chipper.
There you go. I will point out one other thing.
I don't want to get fed into the wood chipper myself.
Yeah.
Just because I criticized the UK government.
Yeah, we are.
You will have to take that up with the crown. I'm
Yes.
sorry.
We are talking about an area where a significant number of their perpetrators aren't even men, because this is boys, and depending on which nation we're talking about, because there are a broad variety of nations in Africa, and a broad variety of cultural differences, and so there are some areas where there are child grooms. There are some areas where there are child brides and child grooms, actually.
Yeah.
But since we're talking about boys specifically, child grooms are what we're mentioning. And they're marrying women. And there are areas where boys are just exploited by women. Right? There are also areas where women don't have the option, and so boys are safer from women, and if there is abuse taking place, then it would be done by men. But there are plenty of places in Africa where the perpetrators are not men, and so it would be heinous to just accuse men in that instance, because you would be letting perpetrators go. You would be condemning the innocent, and you would be doing absolutely nothing for the victims. But, so...
I have it on good authority that arranged marriages only affect women.
Yeah.
Because arranged marriages are necessarily lesbian, right? They only push women together. There's no man involved in an arranged marriage. And if there is, he must be completely on board with it.
Well, here's another hot take that I heard from a feminist a long time ago that I just will never forget. And she was on and on about child brides this and child brides that, and how horrible it was for the child bride to be in that situation. And it was, yes, of course, there are also child grooms, and they go through all the same thing. Oh, that's nothing compared to what the bride is going through in that situation. Imagine you're expecting to marry a big, strong man, and your groom turns out to be a 10-year-old boy. You can't do anything with him. And I was like, you have got to be kidding me. You cannot just have flipped like that quickly. And not be like that. Lack of self-awareness is so profound. How do you breathe? She didn't see what was wrong with what she said.
Jesus.
If an adult man marries a 10-year-old little girl, she's the victim because she just married a big scary man. But if a grown woman marries a 10-year-old little boy, she's the victim because she just got a wimpy little boy instead of her knight in shining armor. Like, that was her. It's like, could you maybe consider that it's a bad thing for children to be forced to marry regardless of what sex they are? And no matter what sex they are, the adult in the situation is not the victim?
Right.
But here in the West, we don't force boys to marry women. We just put them in school where they get raped by women.
And then we make them pay child support.
Indeed.
Mm-hmm.
But they don't have to get married. Which is good, because if they do get married, they're going to get divorced. But yeah, so to this thing that we were going to look at last. This direct payment from the COVID-19 spending to Forum-Focused Operation Redefine Masculinity in NYC DBA Forum-Focused Operation Redefined Masculinity NYC. So it's an incorporated thing.
Just how much money were we paying in to the destruction of the male gender?
Yeah. So it's
all
still...
of it.
I say we.
All of it.
Y'all were doing this.
Yeah.
In my country, it's still completely unknown how
Still
much
hidden.
taxpayer money we're pumping into the complete dissolution of human gender. Like,
Well, think about this, and this is something that caught my attention. So the BBC is crippled under this defunding of the U.S. aid, but they still collect a license fee from every single one of y'all.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just how much are they in debt?
Yep.
And where is their money going to?
Oh, the
Well, we
BBC
know
is
where
going to
it's coming
die
from.
within the next 10 years.
God willing.
Yeah.
Indeed.
So these guys got
Yeah.
$15,000 to keep their operation going during the COVID crisis in 2024. The 4-year-old COVID crisis. Yeah. And it's a direct payment for specified use activities to be performed, continue business deliverables, economic relief to small business impacted by COVID-19 expected outcomes, provide economic relief to businesses that are currently experiencing a temporary loss of revenue, intended beneficiaries, small business, there we go, subrecipient activities NA. So they didn't pay it out to anybody, they kept it. That's what that means, right? So I'm like, who the hell are these guys? Who got this money? And I looked them up, and this is them.
And what is a deliverable?
A deliverable, I guess, means what they do in their neighborhood. So initially it looked good. And initially it was like, well, you know, these guys are just men mentoring younger men in their neighborhood, right? But then I remember the title, so I start going through, because when I looked at their initial about page, it didn't explain a lot exactly, and they used the word accountability, and it sounded really good. And then I get down here and I see street harassment. Like, yeah. So the My Brother's Calling thing sounds great, right? A mentorship program dedicated to improving self-awareness and accountability in young men. This social-emotional learning suddenly kills it, because social-emotional learning is code in almost everything for DEI or social justice. And then otherwise, it would be a great way to you know, like Big Brothers, to mentor young men. You know, that's an immature way to handle this. Let's do it this way and go from duking it out with each other to what can we do to solve this problem without having to duke it out? What what compromise can we make? What respect can we form for each other? What boundaries can we hammer out without using an actual hammer? And that's just that, right? You get over here and we have Form NYC's Stop Street Harassment Campaign. A powerful initiative driven by the founder's unique writing and poetic ability through the art of haikus.
What?
This campaign aims to combat street harassment in New York City by spreading awareness and fostering change.
What?
This is why I wanted to end on this.
Wait, what? Hold on. So, I'm sorry, because this whole thing started out with me remembering like the Jordan Neely, right? Harassment. Oh my God, harassment on the street. What? But now you're talking about fucking what? Poetry? Excuse me?
Yeah. And how are they going to use this? I thought, okay, I know that they're not training young men to go up to women and use a haiku format instead of saying, you know, hey baby, do those legs go all the way up? Because that's not gonna. They're gonna get plowed over by somebody who's in a hurry.
Oh my God!
Think they're mentally ill and homeless or something, right?
Yeah, they'll get stabbed by the real guy who has a real fucking mental problem.
Yep.
Because he doesn't give a fuck about what women feel. You know what I mean?
Or they'll get stabbed by the guy who actually wants to know if those legs go all the way up.
Yeah. I'm laughing, but I can't do anything else but laugh because it's just so fucking idiotic.
So I thought, all right, so how are these guys doing this initiative? What exactly are they doing that is worth $15,000 that they need a budget that big? Because, I mean,
Wait a minute. I saw the word stickers, and
Yeah.
I'm just gonna fucking lose my shit.
The Form NYC Stop Street Harassment campaign is a powerful initiative driven by the founder's unique writing and poetic ability. We just read that on the other page, right, guys? Through
Yes.
the art of haikus, this campaign aims to combat street harassment in New York City by spreading awareness and fostering change. Remember how feminists always say that we don't do anything because all we do is spread awareness and foster
Right.
change, according to them, and that's not
Right.
doing anything. So that's what these guys are
Right.
doing, spreading awareness and fostering change. These haikus are transformed into stickers, magnets, and store decals, serving as community reminders to all, especially men, that street harassment is not only
Especially men.
illegal in New York City, but also menacing to women and dangerous to our youth. It challenges the antiquated practice of street harassment and calls for its end. By blending art and activism, Form NYC encourages the community to stand together against street harassment, making the streets of Brooklyn safer. Brooklyn! They're going to put haikus all over Brooklyn to tell men not to ask women if their legs go all the way up.
Brooklyn, good fucking luck.
So,
number one, and number two, this whole thing is all that this is like, we're gonna make guns illegal as if criminals don't fucking break the law.
Like,
Like,
it
what are we
totally detracts
talking about?
from the other stuff they're doing. And they have
Yeah.
other stuff like Form Space, a Form Safe Space, right? They have this Form Safe Space that's supposed to serve as a mental health check-in. Men who are having problems can come in and say, hey, I'm in a crisis.
Yeah, no.
You know, they have this My Brother's Calling thing that they're trying to... But
Men are never
it's
gonna do that.
infected with the socialisms. But this haiku thing...
The fucking haiku thing
Yeah.
it just
And so I have a request for the listeners. I
your
have
hair is so
always-
fair. So fair is your hair that I
Just remember, a
would
haiku
like
has
to
a
cut
specific
it up.
format. Oh God, no.
it's 575,
Yeah,
right?
575. That's right.
Yes.
So, so I want you to sexually harass us
Using
in
haikus.
haiku
Oh,
form,
do it.
please,
Do
in
it.
the comment section.
Do it. Do it. Do it.
Just
do
remember,
it.
I have super long legs, right? And Lauren has one of the sexiest voices I have ever heard.
I
So,
have brown skin.
yes,
Your skin I must be in.
and since you don't have to write. If you're really creative, you can sexually harass the men, but it doesn't count because this is feminist sexual harassment,
Right,
and they only pay
right.
attention if it happens to women.
Right. It's only for us, okay?
So, but you could totally sexually harass Mike for how tall he is and his genius. You know, figure out. Let's
he's
see.
not paying this.
And confirm.
Unconfirmed. But there we go. So yeah, you can sexually harass all of us. Just make sure you do it in haiku form. So that's my request.
Awesome.
I just want to
That would be
see. I know we aren't going to get
awesome.
1,000 comments, but I just want to see 1,000 haiku.
Yeah, no.
starts with
you
damn,
know, a lot of
baby.
they're gonna forget like the format, right? It's 575, right?
Yeah.
5 syllables, 7 syllables, 5 syllables. I'm forgetting like
We've
famous
already
haikus.
got one. Poppin'
Oh,
Hullaballoon
shit.
says, haiku. Hannah Banana, super long legs does she have? Peel down those leggings. I love it. It is awesome. So we do have, before we take off, we have a couple of super chows. So let's see. We stopped with the USAID one. So Richard Pierre gave us $5 and gave me a link and said, when you get back to the voting rights discussion, this link is the solar system to scale, with the moon being 1 pixel in size. The map of voting rights could be overlaid with this. It's that long, yeah. I mean, it's like 800 years. Just this as to see just where you are in the historical discussion. Richard Beer gave us another $5 and said, waiting to see if the village people will make the Doge song to the tune of YMCA, or perhaps Duck can do it. Ask him in haiku form.
It takes the village people to raise a child.
There we go.
literally doing the dance. YMCA.
And then we have Meredith. She gave us $5 and said, HBR Talk 341, think about what is going to be found out when the different cabinet members conduct their investigations per executive order and start publishing those reports. Oh
My God.
I'm gonna change my name at that point to Holy Fuck.
Yeah.
That's it. Richard Bier gave us $5 and said, imagine if the money allotted for these programs was actually used with proper oversight and accountability to minimize the administrative overhead to actually installing toilets in India and other undeveloped countries instead of being squandered in administrative acts. Not that I'm advocating for government spending, but rather that there would be tangible results from the money being spent.
Number one, it wouldn't take as much money as we're actually sending them now.
Yeah, we wouldn't be paying an organization to stay active plastering haikus all over Brooklyn. About street harassment. Look at my street harassment haiku.
Oh my God.
With that, thanks you guys for going over this weird shit with me. We have the receipts.
We will be back.
Yep, we will be
Thursday.
back next Thursday with more. These are the fucking receipts, okay? We will be back with fucking receipts.
Oh my God.
Thanks to everybody who works in the background to make HBR Talk happen. Thanks to listeners. Thanks to my two co-hosts. And good night, everybody.
Men's
We
rights
love you
activists
guys. We'll
are
see you next week.
machines, dude.
Next
Okay?
Thursday.
They are literal
Yes.
machines. They are talking point machines. They are impossible to fucking deal with, especially if you have like a couple dudes who have good memory on top of that too. Holy shit, you're fucked.